Hi, I'm Carol, and welcome to a virtual time around the fire in this very special year of Camping in the Grove. I want to tell you some stories about the Tajar Tale that my father learned when he was a camp counselor and I was only about 1 year old. So I'm going to tell you Tajar Tales, and the first one is how the Tajar got his tux. Once upon a time, there was a Tajar. Do you know what a Tajar is? Well, it's something like a tiger and something like a jaguar and something like a badger. And if you should see it once, you would forget what it looks like. But if you should see it twice, you will forget what it looks like. And that would be quite fatal. Now, a Tajar lives in a camp. In and around a camp, over and under a camp, anywhere a camp is, that's where the Tajar lives, and except for when he's in his hiding place, which was somewhere between the bottom of a tree and the top of the sky. Now, when the campers are in camp, the Tajar remains in his hiding place. And when he gets really tired and bored with his hiding place and exceedingly filled with folly, he goes and dances in the moonlight. Now, one summer when the campers were still in camp, but he was exceedingly filled with folly, he went out and danced in the moonlight. And he danced and he danced, and some of the campers saw him once. And the chief camper almost saw him twice, so it almost was quite fatal, but not quite. Now, the range ranger who ranges the ranges in that region looked across the ranges, and he saw the foolish Tajar dancing in the moonlight. And he came across the ranges and he said, "Tajar, Tajar." And the Tajar said, "Yes, sir." And the range ranger said, "Tajar, Tajar, didn't you remember that you're not supposed to dance when the campers are in camp?" And the Tajar said, "Yes, sir." Very sad. So the range ranger got out his needle and thread, and he took a tuck in the Tajar's right front paw. And he took another tuck in the Tajar's left front paw. But of course it didn't hurt because it was magic. And the range ranger said, "Now, Tajar, you will not be able to dance in the moonlight because the tucks make your front legs too short and they won't reach." And so the range ranger took the Tajar and put him up in his hiding place, and there was no more dancing for the Tajar that season. But after all the campers had left, the range ranger, who wasn't quite as severe as he seemed, brought up a ladder thing, and he put it up to the Tajar's hiding place so the Tajar could come down anytime he wanted to. And not too long after that, when all the campers were gone, the Tajar came out of his hiding place. He climbed down the ladder thing, and he started to dance in the moonlight because he was so filled with folly. But he couldn't dance the way he used to on all four legs because his tucks made his front legs too short, and that made him seasick. So then he tried dancing on his hind legs, but that made his knees hurt. So then he tried dancing on his forelegs, but that made all the folly run to his head, and it made him dizzy. And so he sat down with his head between his legs, so discouraged. Pretty soon the range ranger came along, and the Tajar knew he was there, and he hunched his shoulders and looked even more discouraged. And the range ranger said, "Tajar, Tajar." And the Tajar said, "Yes, sir," very sad. And the range ranger said, "Before I'd have only one way of amusing myself." And the Tajar said, "Yes, sir," very meek. But inside he was furious. And the range ranger went away, and the Tajar sat up and said, I'll show that old range ranger that I have lots of ways of amusing myself," which was just what the range ranger thought he would do. And so the Tajar thought and he thought and he thought of all kinds of ways of amusing himself, but they just weren't good enough. And finally, he thought of an absolutely new way, and he knew what he would do to amuse himself. He said, I am going to learn to do death-defying life leaps through the branches. And so he got up and he climbed a tree and he started doing death-defying life leaps. And first he did it with his front paws, but that pulled on the tucks and that made him nervous. So then he did death-defying life leaps with his hind legs. But he was backwards and he couldn't see where he was going, and he needed his hind legs to push off with anyway. And suddenly he said, I know what I will do. This is the perfect idea. I will do death-defying life leaps through the branches with my tail. And so he started swinging through the branches, and he was having a wonderful time. And he just would go fast through all the woods, swinging and swinging by his tail through the branches. And he swung down by the camp, and he found a really specially nice place to fly from the big tree to the frame over the dining table. And he did notice his tail tore just a little, but he kept on swinging through the camp. And then the range ranger came by and he said, Tajar, Tajar. And the Tajar said, yes, sir. And the range ranger said, Tajar, Tajar, are you amusing yourself? And the Tajar said, yes, sir, very proud. And the range ranger said, be careful around here because Kenneth, the tallest camper, has put some nails in the trees and you don't want to get caught. And so the range ranger went away, and the Tajar thought, I wonder where Kenneth, the tallest camper, put those nails. So he started swinging around by the camp, and he caught his tail a little bit, but he pretended not to notice. And then he took one particularly big swing from the tree onto the frame over the dining table, and his tail caught on a big nail that the camper had put in, and the tail fell down on one side of the branch, and the Tajar and the rest of his tail fell down on the other side. Of course, it was magic, so it didn't hurt. But the Tajar sat there very upset because he held the tail in his one hand and he didn't know what he would do. So he looked around and he found a couple of safety pins, and he tried to safety pin the tail back together, but that tore apart. And then he found some string and he tried to tie it back together, but the string was too thin. And then he found some tape and he taped it all together and he tied it with string and he fastened it with a safety pin, and then it stayed very securely. And from then on, he was very, very careful to do his death-defying life leaps away from where Kenneth, the tallest camper, had put his nails. That's it for tonight.